Hello my friends. My name is Bot Mathematician, and this is Holomancer.
And of course Dora, the most daring reporter.
We are infinitely grateful that we have another opportunity to see you all again.
Unlike several previous years in Hearthstone, the year of Hydra was a period of no improvement. In addition to fairly high quality regular content, we were not presented with any fundamentally new things.
As it turned out, Team 5 focused all their efforts on the last phase of the year. Blizzard's main bet was the 11th class, the Death Knight. But it looks like this release turned out to be one of Blizzard's biggest failures, and it didn't live up to expectations.
Why do we think so? Let's understand the current situation step by step.
The design of the new class is one of the most important advantages. The developers endowed the Death Knight with special rules for creating a deck and a special game resource. This is really something new for Hearthstone.
The only thing that confused us was the card mechanics. Due to the lack of electricity in Ukraine, we were only able to release one video out of 3 planned with a review of Death Knight cards. The vast majority of cards are improved versions of old ones. In terms of gameplay, players were offered too few unique things. For this reason, the current playstyles are very similar to the regular Hearthstone stuff. This may not be a bad thing, since the class is completely consistent with the concept of the game, but we would like to see completely unique ways to interact with cards. We expected Death Knight to bring a whole new experience to the game, but that didn't happen. Although, in our opinion, the Death Knight looks much more interesting than the Demon Hunter.
The next aspect is the strength of the new class. The community expected the Death Knight to be completely broken. In our only review of Frost Rune cards, we concluded that Death Knight had too few broken interactions. Many cards are powerful, but in the current Hearthstone, the success of many archetypes depends directly on the amount of value that can be realized throughout the turn with powerful synergies. For example, Miracle Rogue is capable of making crazy turns. Ramp Druid gets a ton of benefits from double his mana limit. Imp Warlock has some too strong combos. Death Knight had issues with this. Of course, the developers did not want to repeat the unfortunate release of the Demon Hunter. Most likely they tried to make the Death Knight balanced, but the class turned out to be too weak.
Another extremely negative aspect is the fact that none of the professional players have chosen a Death Knight deck to compete in the World Championship.
A few words about the new set. The release of March of the Lich King paralyzed both the standard and wild formats. Arcane Hunter went out of control and was promptly eliminated by the developers. The wild format was less fortunate. Discard Warlock has become the most popular and effective archetype that almost broke the competitive game. Team 5 creates 2 strategies for each class in each expansion. Sometimes it's completely new ideas, sometimes it's a meme synergy, and sometimes it's cards that support strategies from previous expansions. Under ideal circumstances, we can look forward to 22 new and updated archetypes in the game.
But March of the Lich King managed to bring to us 2 few brand new decks. After the release, the only new deck that performed well was Death Rattle Rogue. In addition, several old strategies received a small upgrade in the form of several new cards. For example, Ramp Druid got a new core. Fell Demon Hunter evolved into Spell Demon Hunter. Big Spell Mage, Evolve Shaman and Pure Paladin also received minor upgrades. In general, these are almost all changes for competitive play. The previous leaders continued to be at the top. This, in our opinion, led to the fact that the metagame was monotonous and predictable. If you were expecting new experiences from the March of the Lich King expansion, then most likely your expectations will not be met.
2 weeks after the release of the new cards, Blizzard introduced the Big Balance patch. An issue with Discard Warlock and Wild has been fixed. The dominant strategies in Standard have taken a big hit, while some Death Knight cards have gotten a bit stronger. These are very good changes, but the most important 2 weeks after the release of the expansion were not very impressive, which led to a decrease in player engagement.
According to HS Replay Statistics, which on the main page displays the total number of user games per week, after the release of the Maw and Disorder miniset, the peak number of matches that we were able to record was 10,620,000. After the announcement of the new expansion and the return of the Knights of the Frozen Throne set to Standard, the peak number of matches per week was almost 300,000 less. With the release of the new expansion and the new class, peak weekly total games dropped to 10,200,000. Of course, these data cannot be considered sufficiently relevant, since the number of matches does not fully reflect the involvement of the players. But based on these data, we can at least conclude that the interest of the players after the release of the new class and expansion was not impressive.
Lich King is one of the most important characters in the Warcraft universe.
I grant you permission to speak.
Everything related to this character causes hype among the community. The set Knights of the Frozen Throne, which was released in 2017, was the most successful expansion in the history of the game. The return of such an iconic character was only a matter of time, and the creation of a new class from him is the best marketing gimmick to expand the game's audience and attract attention. Let's do some more research to help determine how well Blizzard has realized this potential. To do this, we'll look at a few additional metrics to see how the new class impacts the current state of affairs in Hearthstone.
Here are the Google Trends stats. According to these data, audience interest in the game has been gradually declining throughout the year, and the release of Death Knight did not change this trend. The Murder at Castle Nathria expansion even generated more interest from users.
Now take a look at Sully Gnome's Twitch stats. Community interest in Hearthstone live streaming dropped by 18% over the course of the year. But the most interesting fact is that the peak rates of interest during presentations or special events have almost disappeared. This may indicate that a wide audience has ceased to be interested in new regular content. Most likely, the community is not interested in new content due to predictability. The developers fail to really surprise the players.
Player interest is a very important indicator, but the main thing is profit. Sensor Tower has released Hearthstone's mobile earnings data for November, allowing us to draw conclusions about Death Knight's pre-release profits and compare them to previous expansions. So the total income was only $5 million. $2 million was earned in the App Store worldwide, another $2 million the game earned in the Chinese App Store, and only $1 million on Google Play. Unfortunately, we don't have revenue data for the game on Android devices in China. A year ago, during the pre-release period, Fractured in Alterac Valley, the game managed to earn $7 million.
Profits were not reduced from the previous expansion, but it's worth noting that Blizzard artificially increased the value of $80 pre-orders by adding the Path of Arthas mini set to them. They also sold the first 3D Death Knight skin during this period, as well as the fairly commercially successful Battlegrounds Bash, not to mention a ton of other cosmetic offerings.
Most often, the release month is more profitable than the pre-release period. Moreover, for the first time, Blizzard continued to sell pre-orders even after the release of the expansion, plus players had to spend additional resources to get full access to the new class. Thus, unlike Demon Hunter, Death Knight is not completely free and has a certain entry threshold that forces players to make purchases. Also, there are more cards in the sets, and the number of free rewards has not changed, which forces players to buy more packs to get the full collection. So has Blizzard managed to increase its profits? December isn't over yet, but according to AppMagic, the game has earned more than $2 million but less than $5 million to date. If Sensor Tower confirms this by the end of the month, then March of the Lich King will prove to be the biggest financial failure of Hearthstone ever, at least on mobile platforms.
One of the reasons for such low profits is the extremely low pre-order purchase rate among our community. Only 25% of players made a purchase. If you divide this profit by all the players who took part in the survey, then each player brought Blizzard only $23. This abnormally low result is very similar to Saviors of Uldum pre-orders in 2019. Many players refused to buy a pre-order due to the artificial increase in the cost of the game, which subsequently led to the biggest disaster in the history of Hearthstone. By the way, we devoted a separate video to this topic. Do not miss it if you want to know how the company's controversial decisions affected revenues.
In our video about the Death Knight announcement, we warned that direct manipulation of the cost of the game could lead to loss of profits. Our video, unfortunately, turned out to be prophetic. Blizzard completely ignores its own old mistakes, and stubbornly continues to use the same tricks to increase profits, which subsequently leads to the opposite result.
The company failed to realize the full potential of the most anticipated class in the game. Moreover, they lost money due to their own greed. Someone from the top managers will most likely have to bear the responsibility for this failure. Such an unexpected departure of Dean Ayala from the post of director of Hearthstone before the announcement of a new class no longer seems mysterious to us. Perhaps he did not believe in the success of this approach and did not want to be responsible for ambiguous decisions, but these are just our speculations.
Before we get to the conclusions, we want to make a small announcement. About a year ago, we released a video about the potentially death of Hearthstone, which had quite a lot of resonance. This year we decided to compare the state of affairs in all popular collectible card games. Throughout the year, we have collected data for you that can shed light on the strategies of different companies. It remains for us to supplement our statistics with a small amount of additional data. Don't miss this video, we promise some facts and conclusions will shock you.
Let's finally get back to the Lich King. The saddest fact for us is that in terms of gameplay, Hearthstone is in pretty good shape right now. Even if the new expansion isn't impressive, the current meta game isn't terrible. Designers and developers continue to do quality work. The only disgusting thing that kills Hearthstone is the mediocre management and a terrible monetization strategy.
In our opinion, the reason for the failure of the Death Knight is complex. Fatal influence was not only the increase in the threshold of entry, greed and predictable gameplay, but also other factors. For example, Blizzard was convinced that the announcement of the Death Knight was enough informational occasion to attract the attention of a wide audience. The company focused too little on PR, did not hold any cross-game events between other Activision Blizzard projects. The company did not make any special offers to return old players already at the time of the release of the new class and did not take at least imitation actions to increase the rewards on the rewards track.
The news about the closure of Hearthstone in China definitely affected the profits. In addition, the card game Marvel Snap, from the fathers of Hearthstone, has become too strong a competitor in the mobile market.
Dear friends, do you consider the release of Death Knight a failure?
What is the main mistake of Activision Blizzard? Share your thoughts in the comments and join the polls on our community tab.
Finally, we would like to express our huge gratitude to our patrons.
Dear friends, your support is incredibly important to us.
Thanks to each of you for being with us today.
We hope to be able to get in touch in the future.
Take care of yourself.
And never give up.
Job's done.